There is one perfect, absolute reality. Undivided. Utterly free. Because nothing binds it. There are no parts in it. What is real is always real. It doesn't change. It is. Reality is. And we call it self. Because it's your reality. And you could say, it's the birthright of every human being to know this reality and know it as themselves. Which is a funny way to say it, because this reality was never born. That's why they call it the unborn. So for those that think they were born, for those that think they had a beginning and will have an end, they should know this reality of themselves. The unborn reality, the eternal reality. To know this as ourselves, we have to relinquish that idea of the one that was born, apparently, and will die. Everything dies. What comes goes. But there's something real that does not come and go. That's exactly who you are. That's so much deeper than all this birth and death stuff, all these apparent forms, all these identities. So if you intuit something true about these words, how to get from thinking you're somebody to knowing the reality. How does one get to oneself? How far do you have to go to know yourself? Well, not very far. And that's the whole point. It's good to know where to look to find yourself, because usually we're looking in the wrong place. We have to look at what assumption we're taking to be ourselves currently in order to know ourselves in our formless perfection. And yet it's not a journey somewhere else. It's just a relinquishment of what's not true, and you're left with a very enjoyable truth. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about earnestness, because Sri Nisargadatta who's a wonderful modern sage, he speaks of earnestness quite a few times in this book, I Am That. He says all you really need is earnestness. About knowing yourself, knowing the truth. And a lot of people dabble in spirituality for quite a long time, but seemingly kind of stumble around and not get any deeper. Perhaps it's a lack of earnestness, which really just means sincerity and zealousness about yourself, about your own practice, about knowing the truth. So I'm going to read a little bit from Sri Nisargadatta. So someone asked him, but can a guru give realization without words, without trust, just like this, without any preparation? Because he was speaking about his own realization, he says, I just listened to my teacher and I was very sincere and earnest and I did what he said. It was very simple. And so the questioner's asking, but can it just happen very quickly, without words, without any preparation? And Sri Nisargadatta says, yes, but where is the taker? He says, you see, I was so attuned, I was so completely trusting, there was little resistance in me. It all happened easily and quickly, but not everybody is so fortunate. Laziness and restlessness often stand in the way until they are seen and removed. The progress is slow. All those who have realized on the spot by mere touch, look, or thought have been ripe for it, but such are very few. The majority needs some time for ripening. Sadhana is accelerated by ripening. And so the questioner asks, what makes one ripe? What is the ripening factor? Earnestness, of course. Now I looked up earnestness and it says sincerity. And think about that for yourself. How sincere are you about your own awakening, about your own realization? Seriousness in purpose, diligence, and zealous. So they say, the questioner asks, what makes one ripe? Earnestness, of course. One must be really anxious. After all, the realized man is the most earnest man. Nomi has also spoken of earnestness, and he said that the three things that you really need for realization are earnestness, relinquishment of attachment. Now let's look at that a little bit. Relinquishment of attachment. What is attachment? Attachment could be anything attached to the pure reality, anything else, anything you take yourself to be. attachment to your own thoughts, attachment to an identity, relinquishment of attachment. So when you're earnest, you're going to look at in what ways am I covering over this pure reality with an identity, with thoughts. And the final thing he said was needed for self-realization is inquiry, or a intense inspection into your own existence, a deep looking into the nature of your own being. Those are just words until you actually are earnest enough to find out for yourself what that means. Which is also what Sri Nisargadatta says. Someone asked him, "May I be permitted to ask, how did you arrive at your present condition?" Which is fully self-realized. My teacher told me to hold on to the sense I am tenaciously and not to swerve from it even for a moment. This is also the teaching of Ramana Maharshi. Your own existence. That's really all the information you need right there. I did my best to follow his advice. He was earnest, he was ready, and he just went for it. And when you go for it, you realize there is no body there. And so they go on to ask him, was your realization sudden or gradual? And guess what he says? Neither. One is what one is timelessly. You already are this perfect self. How could it be an event in time? You just realized that the one you thought you were is not who you were. As soon as that's gone, that you're right there, standing as the pure, absolute, pure self. Self of all. Birthright of all. Apparently born beings. Every sage comes to the same realization. Every apparent human form comes from the same source. Why not be the source and not this particularized form seemingly within that source, coming from that source? Know the source itself as yourself. So Nisargadatta said, neither. One is what one is timelessly. It is the mind that realizes as and when it gets cleared of desires and fears. And the mind itself is seen to be nothing. And so they ask, even the desire for realization? In other words, do you even have to clear up that desire? The man who seeks realization is not addicted to desires. He is a seeker who goes against desire, not with it. In other words, if your strongest desire, and this desire blows away all other desires, is for realization, your own knowledge, your own happiness, you're going to get to the root of all desirings. This desire is going to be so wonderful and so all-encompassing, you don't care about the other stuff in the world. There's no big problem with relinquishing stuff because you're so earnest, you're so wanting, you're so interested in your own existence that you're not piddling after a bunch of other things. He is a seeker who goes against desire, which against all his petty desires, and focuses on this one thing, if you call it a thing, his own existence. A general longing for liberation is only the beginning. To find the proper means and use them is the next step. It's important to look in the right direction. You can go to the spiritual bookstore and read all the books, and you still might not be any wiser. Look in the right direction. Look in the direction of the looker. Turn around. See who's there, who's looking. The seeker has only one goal in view, to find his own true being. So this is the earnestness we're talking about. If you wander, if you waver, bring yourself back. Of all desires, it is the most ambitious, for nothing and nobody can satisfy it. The seeker and the sought are one. So that's not very far to go. So we suggest absolute effort until it's perfectly clear. And then there's no effort whatsoever. And you want to put your effort in the right direction to your own existence. So be sincere, be earnest. Don't allow suffering and distraction. Find out who it is that's suffering, who it is that may be distracted. Find out the source of all this arising. It's always joyful. It's always joyful to relinquish attachment. And you cannot fail. You cannot fail in finding the truth. If you're earnest, it will be more and more enjoyable, more and more free,